Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy y'all, this is red-olaughlin. We're on the corner bookstore today on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and I am more than super happy to welcome the owner, the founder, the believer in so many different things with regard to television programming and so many things. It's hard to really encompass everything that she does. But Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck and I have been together on this network. She started it 3 years ago. We just had our first anniversary, but she had some other stuff going on before that with rapping with Jacalyn, and it's amazing. So many things happen, and today just happened to be one of those days that I get a chance to interview my boss. So, Dr. Jacalyn, please join us.
Hi, Red.
Well, I don't get to say that very often anymore. My boss, it just that came out of my mouth. Didn't sound right.
I know. I was laughing. But we've been together on this journey. I think it's actually 4 years, if not 4.5, when it was Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn and now USA Global TV and Radio. It's been an incredible journey. So thanks for taking the ride with me.
It was interesting because I remember our early conversations, and you were, I guess, on the other side of the microphone or the camera, and then you started, okay, let me get on this side of it and be the person in charge. And then there was a lot of things that happened in your life. I remember you talking about the first day of COVID was the day you turned in your resignation from the corporate world, and now you're out there just waving in the breeze. And you started out with a couple of shows, and then it was a dozen shows, and then 20 shows, and 30, and now we're up to 50, 60. I'm not even sure anymore. But it's an interesting growth pattern, and the product that you offer is awareness and education in so many different areas. And congratulations on going over 2 million views last year on YouTube. Many more than 2 million, because there's so many different platforms you have, and not all of them give you accurate measurements on how many people actually view it. But anyway, before we start on the author part of it, let's just kind of talk a little bit about the USA Global TV and Radio Network, how it has developed, what your view was for it, where you see it going. And then we kind of get into the author aspect of things and go from there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Red. I'm also producing the show, which is interesting. So spotlight myself, which I'm not usually doing. So USA Global TV and Radio is truly global. And we have show hosts from all over the world. And each person decides how and when, how often, what the topic is of the show. And many of the people actually started off co-hosting a show with me. And my goal is to get everyone up and ready so that they can do the shows by themselves. So I like to think of it as giving people some education, some awareness, and then sending them off on their own. That brings me joy. I like nothing more than collaborations. Red, yesterday I introduced you to someone you had met at the reunion show. I'm hoping that you two can collaborate. And so that's what this network is about. It's about sharing and caring, as our friend Roland Friedel would say. It's about giving people a place to share their voice and making them feel that they are truly heard by using elevated listening skills. We don't use any scripts here, and so no one knows what anyone's going to ask. And by doing so, we have to focus on the person's reply so that we can ask a question that follows on to that. We don't ask questions because we're nosy, because we want to just find out personal information about people. No, we want to spotlight people so that they feel they're comfortable enough to share something about their journey to help someone else.
Your journey as an author has been interesting in many regards, because we started out with behind the green screen, which made a lot of sense because that's where you operated. That's where your comfort zone was. And you told people how to do this business. And it was fascinating from many regards, because here's a list of equipment you need. Here's the things you need to do. Here's what you got to master. Boom, boom, boom. And then we were going to do something on tattoos, and we are going to do something on something else. And it kind of evolved in its own way. And that's not exactly the path that I want to go down. So we gave up on the tattoos. We went down another road. And so as you were starting this thing, you were also advocating better listening skills for people. When did the author bug in you decide, I need credibility with a book in order to be the listening mentor to the world?
Great question. Thank you. It was actually from one of our former team members who told me that I was a really good listener. And I've heard that from people over the years, that they'll tell me things that they wouldn't ordinarily tell someone else. And I thought to myself, I hadn't felt like I was listened to for a lot of my life, because I have ulcerative colitis and people would give me solutions that they thought were appropriate. Why don't you take Pepto-Bismol? Why don't you not provide solutions when you are not a doctor? You're not a longevity expert like you are, Red. So I thought, let me put together a book to help people, first of all, test their knowledge of their own listening skills. And that sometimes brings awareness when people see their score and someone will say, I got a 50, maybe there's some work to be done. But even getting 100, there might be work to be done. So the whole point was give people something that is germane to foundational wellness in a relationship. And for me, it was your idea for this. It's actually like a business card. It's like a calling card that I give to people. So I'm not actually trying to make money with the books anymore. I'm just leaving people with the books to help them have a reference to refer to.
Yeah, the reference that I was using with the books was, I have a good friend here in Houston. He has a book that's literally the size of a CD case, and it's 62 pages. And he makes six figures a year, and he gives that book away as a business card. So when he walks into Shell or Conoco or Halliburton or whatever, and he lays a half a dozen of these on the table for the CEO and senior vice presidents, it tells them what he is, what he can do. So in other words, it establishes his credibility big time, because he's an author, but he also is giving something away for free that adds a lot of value. So in your particular case, you're giving away now value to people to improve. Is there any profession that we have out there right now that listening is not a major part of becoming a success? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. What I found on this journey, and by the way, presenting at libraries and your idea again, thank you. And I just presented in London. We presented to students, MBA students in Zambia, is most people think they are good listeners, and it's everybody else's problem. We don't get along because it's your problem, because you this, you that. And when they take the course, especially if it's in person or watching role plays, people will have an aha moment. They'll look and they'll say, you know what? That role play was me and my husband. That was me and my daughter. And it's sort of a moment where I think they get the clarity that they didn't have before, and then they start to feel really badly that they've been torturing the other person, and meanwhile they have accountability as well.
Okay, so how do you maintain accountability by being a blonde? Tell me that.
By being a blonde?
Yes.
Well, because I think it's how you come across, how you present yourself. I think regardless of what we look like on the outside, it's how you treat other people, and giving people that respect and acknowledging them, and not always having to have the last word.
that was the avenue I wanted to go down. Thank you. Because when you look at somebody, you already predetermine something. You listen to them and now you reinforce it, or, oh my, I didn't realize that, or you change your mind. So even before we meet somebody, if they're 150 pounds overweight, if they're 7 foot tall, or if they're 5 foot tall, we already have preconceived notions, and those notions tend to go with us as we're listening to them speak. If I listen to our current president, our former president, 3 or 4 or 5 presidents back, each one of them has a credibility about them with regard to their ability to communicate. And sometimes I'm hearing things and, okay, I disagree, but I understand. Other times I hear things, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we do the same thing to as you told, our parents, our kids, our neighbors, our coworkers, and our bosses. So those things, everywhere it applies. I'm trying to, if I'm a astronaut, I got to communicate. I got to listen to what's going on. If I'm an airline pilot, I got to listen to. There's a lot of. I'm not sure there's a job out there. Maybe a monk that doesn't talk to anybody might have that uniqueness of not having to listen well. But I think just about every job that's out there requires an exception. It requires listening. We get better by enhancing our skills, and listening is one of those skills. So as you started to write your book on how to listen better, you came up with role plays. Let's go down that road for a while. Why role plays?
Well, the role plays are a lot of fun. I love directing them. And you did some of the role plays. We had a number of team members. That was almost 3 years ago, by the way. But the role plays really give people the opportunity to see people in action, and then they can relate to it. One of my favorite role plays was with Hyatt and Linda. And Hyatt was at the desk, and I directed Linda to come in and talk to the back of his head. And when you're in the role play, even though it's only a role play, you're still experiencing something. So Hyatt felt something with Linda talking to the back of his head, and she felt something. And this happens all the time. When I teach my classes in person, I actually have people do impromptu role plays. They have no idea what I'm going to ask them to do. And when they describe, if you're the one sitting down and someone's talking to the back of your head, what it feels like to have someone talk to the back of your head, and then for the other person to not see their face, but yet it's something that we do all the time. We just walk into a room and we walk up behind someone. We have no idea what it is they're doing. And all of a sudden, because we have important news, they should just drop whatever it is they're doing, which is disrespectful to the other person. And I feel that most people, I don't have a percentage of this. I'll just use myself, for example. I want to give people my undivided attention. But right now, I'm on this television show with you. So if someone were to come through the door or someone's going to call, I can't pay attention to them. And people feel it. People feel it. And so what happens is, and then I'll stop talking. Sometimes we become so emotional about something. I mean, think about all the things going on in the world. And people have feelings. And so they just want to take those feelings and they want to dump them on the first person that they see that they haven't asked permission from, and they're not going to get the response that they want because the person might not be mentally, emotionally, physically available to give them their attention.
Well, it's interesting because I think this happens to all of us. If you have a family around, you're sitting there, maybe you're watching a TV show. I'm usually on my computer sometimes, and a head will pop in the door and say something, and I'll usually hold a hand up because I'm right in the middle of composing something. But if I'm not, I'll physically turn around and address the person. But I think if I'm trying to interject in somebody and they hold a hand up for, finger, hand, whatever, and they're saying, hold on, all of us, doesn't matter who it is, we're going to hold on for just a minute because there's something going on that attention that you want from them can't be had right now. And I think that's the universal one. You just kind of just hold your hand up. So as I'm listening, I hear there's something back there. Now I got to make a decision. Let me finish what I'm doing right now, or am I at a point where I can actually stop what I'm doing? Phone rings. I get to a point where, okay, it can go to message. I don't care. It's something that took me a long time. I don't need to answer that phone because the technology's there for me to get the answer later. Now, if my wife is out and the weather's bad and the phone rings, different set of circumstances. I want to be more cognizant. So I think as we're doing our normal job or our normal activities, we tend to change what's important to listen to. And in your role plays, we can sit there and be in the role, or we can watch someone else as if they're on TV, which they are. And we get a different perspective. It's not us. We see it from an outside perspective. And that's what I really loved about the role plays was, what's wrong? Okay. And then you describe what's wrong. In some cases, well, that's what I caught, but that's not really the cause of the problem. And that's what you go into with the role plays is we analyze what really was going on with the listening portion of this scenario. And I thought you did a masterful job of that.
Well, thank you very much, Red. I appreciate that. I want to start recording some more role plays because I feel that it's important, especially with what's going on in the world today, for people to understand how can you give the gift of listening without judgment. And there's so much judgment. I said this on the show before. Today and yesterday on social media, I've just been deleting people. I don't like all the negativity, all the finger pointing, all the anger, and then other people are commenting and putting the posting person down. I mean, it just goes back and forth. It doesn't bring any value to your life. It actually pulls you down into this negativity. And so for me, if we can see behavior that other people are demonstrating, we have the potential to see it in ourselves and see it in our own relationships.
A long time ago, I was at a church event, and it wasn't a retreat. It was just a speaker. It wasn't actually a church. I'm a Catholic. It wasn't mass. It was somebody came into the church, used the church, and they were helping us understand things. And the part that really and truly hit me was the fact that you were talking about our emotions. You walk in and there's Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Oh, I can't stand that woman. And you emotionally get upset. And just the reverse, you go, whoa, it's a beautiful looking woman there. So we have our emotions going on both sides, but how do we actually stop some of that stress from happening? Now you delete them, that gets rid of them. But the other one that I really like was the guy says, okay, there's somebody there that's bothering you. Really, you can't stand to be in their presence. Write their name on your hand. Take your finger and write their name. Let's call it Jim, Jim. Look at it, visualize that person's face, visualize what they represent, and then just throw it away. Just watch it leave your hand and go into the ether. And okay, I played the game. I had no problem at all. And in this particular case, one of my wife's bosses at her work, wasn't her super boss or anything, but one of the chain of command, was just always an irritant. Don't ask me why, but just that personality. And less than 2 weeks later, we're at some kind of function. I don't know what it is. And there she is in the doorway, and I got to walk past her. And all of a sudden, I'm walking up, and I don't have that feeling. No animosity. She's just another person. I was polite to her as I always was, but some of that emotional drain just drained right away, and it wasn't there anymore. So as we're looking at people and we're thinking and we're prejudging, our prejudging ends up with our facial expressions. Somebody can tell there's something wrong if they're an expert in neurolinguistic programming, because our face gives us away. We can't hide something. But if you've really given away that emotion, now you can listen a lot better because you're not being interfered with by your own brain. Your subconscious mind is no longer impeding our listening ability to somebody. So I think that's a major way of looking at things. If we have an emotional event with a coworker, a spouse, or whatever, we got to get rid of that emotion in order to what is the real crux of what we're listening to? Am I emotionally upset with somebody? Am I prejudging them? let's get rid of that and listen to what they're saying.
Very true. I think emotions can really interfere with our ability to listen. And I'll give you an example. I took a hot yoga class yesterday, and I don't think I've practiced yoga in probably a year because I hurt my wrist. Anyway, it's a huge space and you could go anywhere. And so I put my mat down, I got myself ready, and this man came in and he came close to where I was. And I just had this feeling that he was going to be someone that makes a lot of noise during class. I just knew. And I was starting to get upset. And I said to myself, maybe you should move your space, move your space. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be in control of myself. I'm prejudging him. Well, of course, he was one of those people, heavy breathers, makes moaning noises during yoga. I'm like, so I was getting upset. And I said to myself, what is it about this that I'm getting upset about? And I thought, because he's not following protocol for yoga. And I thought, well, what is protocol for yoga? Does anyone say, is there, you're supposed to breathe in and out through your nose and sometimes through your mouth. But anyway, I thought, this is about me. I need to control my own emotions so I can listen to my body and listen to the instructor give the cues. And I was able to do it. Even in Shavasana at the end, he was making all kinds of noise. And I thought, give him grace. So that's what I really like for people to take away. We're not always going to agree on everything. No one says that we have to, but who decides if how you feel is more important than how I feel? And so if we give the gift of elevated listening, there is no judgment. We could bring on countless people, Red, onto this show or any show who's on one side or who's on the other side. And both are right because they have the ability to give their opinions. It doesn't mean that it's factual, but how they're feeling is valid. And so that's what I really want people. I have my book here, by the way. It's Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. That's one of the things I want people to take away from elevated listening. It's like, what is elevated listening? It's giving people a space where they truly feel heard. They feel heard and respected, regardless if you don't agree. Red, we don't use any scripts here. And I have interviewed countless people who feel completely differently than what I feel. But the truth is, unless you're a good friend of mine, nobody knows how I feel. And no one's going to know how I feel because it's not about me. It's about the guest. It's about the other person.
Well, you've given me a lot of good, super good advice to become a better host. And one of the first pieces of advice you gave me was my job as a host is to make the guest the star of the show. And whatever it takes to make the guest the star of the show, that's what I have to do. Now, part of that is understanding who that guest is, what value they are going to give my audience, and how do I get that value from them. Now, we've seen a lot of people, Dr. Jacalyn, where we have this little, go ahead and bring yourself back up for just a second. The speaker, okay. The speaker is me. I'm there on the whole screen. And then depending on how that presentation of the guest is going, if it's going on and on and on, we tell them ahead of time that if all of a sudden they're there by themselves and now there's two people on the screen, that's a clue that we need to move on. Subtle, and it's not really, I'm not interrupting anybody, but it's something that we agree upon in the front that a lot of people can get their point across. Boom, boom, boom. Thank you very much. But they go boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, and they don't stop. And the same thing happens in real life. Somebody commandeers a conversation and they're going on forever, and you are fighting to get a word in. But when you're on TV like this, I have a job to make Dr. Jacalyn the star of the show. But I can't do that by just talking all the time or letting her talk all the time, because at some point in time she's talked out a particular topic and we need to move on to something else, because the value she has to share is more than just that tidbit. It's a larger iceberg of information, and we just chip it here, chip it there, and get that information out to everyone. And so when we are talking, and I'm sure anybody watching the show, that person's been talking a long time. We don't say that, but it's just kind of inherent in us. Then all of a sudden I'll pop up on the other side, and it's interesting how very quickly they wrap up that conversation and begin the next one. I've had in fact, maybe one person that's kept going on and on and on, but in general, they're pretty good. They just need to be tapped on the shoulder. Next. And that's how we do it here at the USA Global TV and Radio Network, is just a a simple pop-up of the other person, we're ready to move on to the next one. So you had this book, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I just reached out to someone about doing an interview, and they asked me if I could send the questions. And I said, I don't even know what the questions would be. So there's nothing for me to send. And people feel uncomfortable because they don't know where it's going to go. And that, to me, is the beauty. If you're doing an interview and you're an expert in your area, or you had your own story, your own journey, you know that journey. You don't need questions in advance. If you're an expert in longevity, you don't need questions in advance, because if there's something that I'm asking you and you don't know it, you're going to tell me, you know what, I don't know that, but I'm going to find it out. So I think people hold on to certain things as crutches, and the phone is one. When it comes to listening and people are in their phone, they're not listening to you. And it could be because they don't want to deal with whatever it is that you're saying, or maybe they have some kind of issue that they're addicted to their phone. I mean, people do have things like that. People are addicted to the stock market. They're checking their stocks constantly. People are addicted to soap opera. I mean, whatever it could be. So when you're having a conversation with someone, like right now, you and I have to be totally present. You can't be on your phone. I can't be on my phone, because we're going to miss what one another is saying. And that's what happens in relationships, is we have these distractions, we hide in the distractions, and then the other person feels it. They know you're not listening to them. Red, I'll give you an example. I actually don't know if you're a football fan or not. Are you?
I was in the past. I still have a vague interest in it. It depends on who, what, when. But yes, I'm a football fan. I'm just not as excited about football as I was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Okay, that's fair. I'm pretty excited about it because the Philadelphia Eagles are moving forward. Yay. So here's the thing. You're watching the game, you're watching something, and all of a sudden somebody walks in front of the TV and goes, Red, hello. Hello, you're watching a game. Why would you confront him or address him when he's watching the game unless it's an emergency? But people think, oh, he's paying more attention to the television than he is to me. He is, because he's watching a game. He's watching the game. He can't pay attention to you and the game. So if you set the boundaries in advance and you say, you know what, I'm going to spend the next 4 hours watching this game. I know you're not a fan. That's totally okay. Afterwards, let's have some dinner or laugh, whatever it is. But you set the boundary and the expectations. So there's not that feeling of, oh, I don't matter. Oh, the TV's more important. Now, if you're watching the television all day long and never talking to your partner, for example, well, yeah, that's a completely different story. Maybe you're hiding in the TV, so to speak. So I'll stop there and see what questions you might have.
Now, a couple of real quick ones. Number one, in the old days, we didn't have the ability to go back and re-see something that happened. And if the TV people didn't cover that and show you again, it was lost. But nowadays, we can go back and watch it again and again and again. So I think part of that interruption has been overcome by technology, but that's just a minor point. But expectations, you talked about a brief moment ago. And I went to a small school in South Texas. And when I went there, we were Division II NCAA, actually NAI way back then. And I think we ended up 7 national championships. But right after I left, they came in with the veer offense, and we got into the quarterback that exceptional. He was put in the last game of the season. I think they were 2-8 at that point in time, and they won that game. Then he was the starting quarterback the next year, and they won 13 in a row. The next year they won 12 in a row. The next year they won 13 in a row. National champions 3 years in a row. They went 40-some games without losing. But the expectation was from high school, he was the place kicker and the field goal kicker. And the coach of my school said, we don't allow our quarterbacks to do that. That's not a quarterback job. But they finagle back and forth. And the coach says, if you miss, that's it. I'll allow you to do the job until you miss. So there the expectation was set. And Dr. Jacalyn, he went 137 point after touchdowns and never missed in the next 3 years. And I'm not sure how many field goals, but the expectation was set. The team knew what was going on. Boom. And coach couldn't argue because he said, when you miss, that's it. We'll get a real punter in there. So I think the expectation is something that is overlooked in many, many cases. The other part that I wanted to bring up with regard to expectations, when we're dating, we have expectations of the person that we're dating. And as we date, okay, well, I don't like that, but that's fine. I can live with that. Oh, that really cements our relationship. We feel out that other person with regard to their mental, their emotional, their entire psyche. And then we make a decision to marry them, good, bad, or indifferent. We take everything that's there, for better, for worse. Yet, when you're looking at something long term, what has happened to that particular couple? Well, maybe the person says, well, I don't like that particular thing about that person. I'll make her change. We don't make people change. You accepted that person with that flaw, whatever that flaw is. We accepted that person. Well, it may be my wife, it may be my kid, maybe my sister. It doesn't matter. There are certain things in people that have a tendency to, I wish you wouldn't bring that up. But again, if we're so intent upon making a change, we should never have gotten married to begin with, or we should have broken off the dating process, because trying to make somebody change is not the answer to the problem. The answer to the problem is understanding, can you live with that? And you brought that up very nicely a short while ago with regard to understanding the expectations and the boundaries. And so that is a boundary that has worked well for me for 56 years in our marriage. And I'm sure there's things that my wife will accept of me that I do all the time, and vice versa. So it's an acceptance, but it's also a boundary, and you don't push those boundaries. You don't piss people off just because you can. Well, maybe some people you do, but anyway, your thoughts, Dr. Jacalyn?
I think that's a great point, that sometimes we know the trigger points for our partner or for family members, and we go there. And I know it doesn't feel good for either person, and it's not elevated listening. And what I'd really like people to take away from, whether it's the book or the Listening Mentor TV show or just listening in general, is when you treat someone with compassion, when you think to yourself, I wonder what it must be like for her or for him, it's a much different dynamic than if you're judging. So people could be watching right now and thinking that I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's fine, that's on them. But I do know what I'm talking about. And how do I know? Because I've done over 5,600 shows. I think at this point, I've written books, I've given speeches, and people have told me that they have been able to take away value from what it is that I've shared about listening skills. So listening skills are something that we have to work on. Just because we take a course or we read a book, that doesn't mean that we are listening at an elevated level. That means we have awareness now, and now we have to put it into practice. And something else that I'd like to share is we have a team of elevated listeners. I think there are 95 people who've actually finished the course, and then there's probably another 50 who paid for it and then never took it. So I just became aware of that, by the way. So in any event, we have people across the world who have made a point to at least look at what are elevated listening skills, but you have to practice it all the time. And so for me, when I'm having a conversation, when you're talking, Red, I am not thinking to myself, where's this going? What's he going to ask me? I have no idea what you're going to ask me, but I feel confident in myself that whatever you ask me, I'll be able to answer because I believe in myself. I have the confidence. And so I don't need to one up you or anyone else. I don't need to judge you. And I feel that we're so interested in ringing the bell, so to speak, that I'm right. I know there are people who are teaching me things all the time. I've learned so much from you, Red. And that's what I would just like to encourage people to have, that childlike curiosity, that wonder, and that respect for humankind, that respect for the other person, regardless of what it is that they feel on a specific topic. They're entitled to their feelings. You're entitled to your feelings. But how can we coexist? And to me, that's through listening at an elevated level.
And you're listening doesn't mean you agree with the person, because that's their view, as you talked about earlier. That's how they feel about something. So if you're an environmentalist, if you're whatever your political philosophy is, that's your belief. That's fine. But I'm listening. I may disagree, but I'm listening. I'm giving you the respect that you're talking about. Now, you mentioned just a brief moment ago ringing the bell. I mean, it was what five? This is before COVID, and one of the standard things going around was, Dr. Jacalyn, would you rather ring the bell or answer the bell? And that was kind of a thing, and it all boiled down to the fact that when you answer the bell, it's like the end of a rest period in boxing, and now you're ready to go again. But if you're ringing the bell, it's as if you're a SEAL and you're giving up because you're dropping on request. You go up there in front of the whole SEAL team and you're saying, this isn't for me, and you ring the bell. Well, that was the connotation they were trying to get. But people, well, I like to ring the bell, but we don't have a context. So I think part of the context is, and you mentioned earlier, if somebody is really an expert in their field, they should be able to answer any question. But what if I ask you the question and you're the expert listener and I say, Dr. Jacalyn, what do you do for fun? Now, that's a different question because it's totally outside the realm of your expertise. And when I ask people that question, it's usually to find out something more about them than just their expertise. And it's amazing how many people cannot tell me what they do for fun because they don't. It's truly amazing that in their life, they are so wrapped up in whatever things are going on, they don't take time for themselves to unwind a little bit, relax, and have fun.
It absolutely starts with self-care. And I think as an extension of that, be mindful when you're asking people, not you, I'm saying in general to anybody out there who's listening or watching, when you're asking people questions, are you asking the questions because you're newsy, you want to know the information, which puts someone in defensive? Why are they asking me about this? What is it about this that they want to know? So when you're asking questions for people, is it because you genuinely care? And if so, are you going to be able to control yourself just to listen? So if I were to ask you a question, Red, and you gave me an answer, and then I jump on you, that's not the right answer. Why would you say that? I'm not listening at an elevated level. I'm judging. And I think there's so much judgment going on. When I read that people were actually applauding what was going on in California because Hollywood is this and Hollywood is, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I'm not judging that person. There's something deep seated and dark that somebody would actually be putting on social media, that they were glad that people died. I mean, that's what we're talking about, that we've gotten to a place in life where we're applauding people having catastrophes. And to me, I don't see any humanity there. And I think to myself, what must that person's personal life be like that they would actually publicly put that they were happy that people died? I don't understand. And again, it's not my place to understand. I'm not judging them. That's not someone I would want to hang around with. I would want to be with people who would actually have a kind heart, who would be compassionate, and who would want to jump in and say, what can I do to help?
Schadenfreude, if I remember the word properly, I think is the term used when you take delight in somebody else's misfortune. And it's some people are that way. Their compassion levels aren't there because, well, that person's a Democrat, or that person's a Republican, or that person's a Jew, or that person's, what doesn't matter. They're taking joy in somebody else's misfortune. There's so much misery out there in California with the fires. With that's just one aspect of many things that are going on, and it's. But we see that in other places. There may be a tsunami someplace. There may be a flood here in South Carolina. There's many places where natural disasters get in the way, but there's other places where it's not a natural disaster. It may have been preventable, but we just don't have that level of either understanding of the system, the process, or we don't allow ourselves to know more in order to be okay. I understand. I think somebody has cancer. Well, okay. unless you have cancer, you probably don't know, but you can certainly understand it very, very well. Take something that we're both very familiar with, Alzheimer's. Unless you're around it, you don't have a true appreciation for it. Well, you don't understand how exasperating, how frustrating, how stressful, somebody with Alzheimer's can be. And even just visiting them, not even just not living with them, but just visiting them, you spend a half hour and you're exhausted. Well, think about that poor person that lives with that person as a caregiver. So there's so many things out there that we take for granted because we're healthy and we don't see the other side of it. And okay, I think I understand. Well, maybe we don't. But if we listen, we pick up a little bit more, pick up just those little, okay, I'm starting to see this a bit more because I didn't appreciate what that other person was doing. And I'm looking at the time, and we have another show coming up very, very quickly. Well, actually, I have another show. We both have another show coming up quickly. I'm going to turn it over to you for final comments. And more importantly, how do people get in touch with you for the listening course that you're talking about?
Thank you so much, Red. So this is the book, Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. And again, it's one of 16 books. There's a whole book series for children. So in this book, there are quizzes. For example, which of the following is not characteristic of elevated listening? So you can take the quiz in the beginning, read the book with the case studies, and then at the end, there's another quiz. You can also go onto our website, which is usaglobaltv.com, and the listening quiz is there. It's also on drjacalyn.com, and I'll put these websites in the show notes. I'm not doing it while I'm talking because I'm paying attention. So, and you can take the course by going to either of the websites or by going to Thinkific, and I'll drop the link in there as well. So what I'd like to leave you with is every one of us is going through our own journey, and no one's journey is more important than anyone else's journey. But what is important is to treat people with respect, treat people how you would like to be treated. And if you find yourself emotionally volatile, it's not a great time to interact with other people. Think about it. If you are going through something and you're very emotional, this might not be the greatest time to talk to your partner about your relationship or to talk to somebody about the money they're spending, whatever the case may be. Get yourself to a place where you're calm, where you're collected, where you're looking for solutions. And at that point, ask for permission. Red, would this be a good time to talk to you about XYZ? Excuse me. And apparently it's not going to be because we're on a television show. So please pick up a copy of this book. I think you'll find there's something of value for everyone. And again, my goal is for people to have inner peace and for us ultimately to have world peace. Thank you for this time.
I appreciate your time greatly, Dr. Jacalyn. Again, my boss on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, the owner, the instigator, the chief listening officer. Dr. Jacalyn is so good in so many ways, and especially if you're interested in a career in broadcast journalism, being a host on a show like this, please contact Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck at the USA Global TV and Radio Network. usaglobaltv.com is her website. And talk to her because she has a lot of things to offer and one of the best people in the world that I know. With that, I am going to get ready to sign off. I got 11 minutes before my next show starts, which is The Wise Ones. And I have a very dear friend of mine today, Russ Johns, who will be my guest. And I've said this many, many times, the fact that when he used to be here in the Houston area and I would attend his weekly events, he would offer more value per hour than anybody else that I know. It's just that he's just bubbling up value all the time. So we're going to pick up with him here very shortly, and then I'm going to be talking about diets in a sense. The topic is diet, but we're going to delve into it a little bit deeper in Talking Heads, which is an hour and 10 minutes from now on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. So with that, red-olaughlin, I'm signing off of the Corner Bookstore and look forward to seeing you on the next show or next week. Either one is fine. Take care. Bye now.
In a world full of noise, misunderstandings, and interruptions, master the art of listening with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck is the listening mentor of USA Global TV and Radio and the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. Elevate your listening. Elevate your life. Join a global learning experience in person or via Zoom. Reserve your spot today. usaglobaltv.com/book-your-session or drjacalyn.thinkific.com. Join Dr. Kerbeck's listening courses or hire her to unlock deeper connections and authentic conversations. Have you ever felt unheard? Like your words float into a void, leaving you invisible and disconnected? How about feeling judged, when assumptions overshadow your truth, leaving you misunderstood and defensive? And then there's that moment when someone offers solutions you never asked for, dismissing your feelings and leaving you more frustrated than before. It doesn't have to be this way. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the listening mentor, understands. She's here to help you reclaim your voice, build stronger connections, and create meaningful conversations that inspire understanding and mutual respect. Through her groundbreaking books, online and in-person courses, and interactive workshops, you'll learn how to navigate life's most challenging interactions. Discover the power of elevated listening and transform how you communicate. Master setting boundaries and asking permission to protect your peace. Learn to recognize and release judgment, fostering empathy and true connection. Dr. Kerbeck also offers personalized coaching, one-on-one or group sessions designed to fit your unique needs. Whether in person or virtually on StreamYard, her guidance will empower you to thrive. You don't have to struggle alone. The path to deeper connections and better relationships start here. Visit drjacalyn.com or usaglobaltv.com. Join a global community of empowered listeners and transform your life, one meaningful conversation at a time. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck is the listening mentor. Start your journey today.